Polynesia in the hot seat, where we bring together inspiring voices from across the Pacific to share their journeys, wisdom, and stories that uplift and empower our people. I am Leaso Filoeli'i coming to you live from Katy, Texas.
And Falava, I'm Lina Famuina, joining in from the beautiful state of Hawaii. Ai tatou tele I amataina le tatou whetufanga ai o tala, e mua moana si le vi inga mal whawhitai le atua moana whamanuianga ma puipuinga ia I tatou uma. Ia malu le vai lo finangalo pe a whai sasi se upu a matou nei I pulse of Polynesia. Leaso and I would not be complete or successful without the assistance of our team, Eileen Tumalu and Fufui Petelo, who will be monitoring Facebook and YouTube. We'd like to also thank everyone for tuning in to share our trials and triumphs together as an Ainga. Please use this opportunity to ask those burning questions that you'd like to know, but also please remember to keep it respectful. I'm reading those comments via text messages and screenshots, so I'll be multitasking and looking off screen here and there, but I'm definitely paying attention.
He's an Army ROTC graduate from the University of Oklahoma, a Phi Delta Theta brother, a former rugby player, and even an inspiring model. Carrying the Matai title, Tasiaeafe, he honors his family legacies while preserving Samoan heritage through storytelling and cultural outreach. A devoted husband, father, and financial advocate, he tackles Fa'asau, stereotypes, and racism while excelling in military, business, and leadership. Tonight in the hot seat, we are honored to welcome Tasi Taufa'asau, Arlington. Welcome, Arlington. Welcome to the hot seat.
Alofa. Thanks again for the opportunity, especially considering me to join you guys on your podcast.
So before we start, you know what? We have a couple of fun facts that I'd like to go through with you. And we've gathered a couple of these listed fun facts that I thought was interesting to start with. So one of them is you graduated from the University of Oklahoma. Your Matai title, graphic art design, is one of your hobbies that you like to do on the side, and also where your name came from, and also the banner that you created for your class of 1992 during your last anniversary that you had with your class. If you want to just start with your what type of person were you at the University of Oklahoma?
So, for me, the type of student I was, um, uh, I started college, I would say a little bit later than a normal folks because I spent the initial 4 years in the military. So, after that first 4 years, starting college it wasn't really a culture shock, but it was, you felt a little bit behind. So I had to take a lot of, I would say, remedial courses. And I do remember at one time, one of the professors who said, he said, for all of you guys here, you should be ashamed of being in this class right now. It was a math class. And I remember the next day, about 75% of the working folks dropped out of that class. But I still had the focus. I knew I was behind, but I had a goal to chase. So I knew there's going to be struggles. There are going to be a lot of obstacles in place. But if you imagine quitting on day one, like most of the folks, I probably wouldn't be here today. Um, for me, the second time around going to college, because I had started while I was on active duty, but when I transferred to University of Oklahoma, one of the things I was more focused. So even though I was 23, most folks were like 17, 18, but to me, I felt much older than them. Um, Students would joke around and say like, "Do you ever miss a class?" But you treat it differently because you know that the struggles you had those initial 4 years in the military, you had discipline, and I think I was more focused on on attaining that degree. So that's the type of person that I was when I went to OU.
So you said that you joined the military first before you went to Oklahoma.
Mhm.
What led you to Oklahoma? Was it the military? You were stationed there, or how did you? What made you choose that university?
So there was a small community college near Fort Sill is where I was stationed at. And early on in my career, I didn't really understand the rank structure, but I realized that I was not making enough money as an enlisted soldier. And there was these young guys who are officers, and I could tell they were making a lot of money because the cars they drove compared to us enlisted guys. And I asked my supervisor, how do I make that kind of money? And his response was, you have to go to college, right? And his words were more harsher. It was like, go to college, you idiot, you know? And to me, it's like, okay, you know, is that all I need, right? Just go to college. So I asked him, would you support me going to college? And he said, yeah, I will. So I enrolled, and there are times when we go out to the field. So we're in the field and I'm all dirty, and I'll tell my sergeant, hey, I have class tonight. And he would drive me in a Humvee, and here I am, you know, late at night attending my classes and then getting out my classes, and then we'll go back to the field. But it's a humbling experience, but at the same time, you know, like in high school, if you're ashamed, you just like avoid it, right? Like, but for me, even though I was dirty and I know I reek because you know we've been in the field, and people are just kind of looking like, man, you know, this dirty guy, you know, he doesn't smell right, you know, sitting in the classroom. But I had that motivation, you know, to keep pushing on or just look past, you know, these obstacles. But that was my initial attempt at college. And then my wife, at you know, at the time, she was taking a summer course. She was attending OU at the time, so that's where we met. And after like 2 years of her driving down and visiting me, she finally said, "Why don't you see if you can transfer to the University of Oklahoma?" So I decided to leave the Army for good. Well, not for good, but a temporary stoppage so I can attend University of Oklahoma. I wanted to get my degree because the pace that I was moving at as a part-time soldier, you know, and a part-time student and full-time soldier, it was taking forever to get a degree. So I wanted to put that on hold and then go to OU and get my degree. So that's how I got to OU. Mhm.
And I noticed that oh, sorry, go ahead, Lena.
No, I was gonna ask, since we're talking about also back home in high school, right? Back home, when you graduated, were you in, or when you were attending Leong in high school, were you in ROTC, or did you foresee joining the military and leaving, or what was your way off the island?
So I actually went to ASDC after I graduated, and I went there just because everyone else was doing it, but my mind wasn't in there. Like I went, I remember dropping out, and I didn't tell my mom, and I think that's what hurt the most was I faked the funk like I was going, and my mom believed that I was going to school the whole time. And I had what you know, but you
Fine.
know, I wasn't even going to class. I had to. And then you know, my mom finally found out that you know this guy really didn't go to class, and she was so upset with me because she had so much hopes. You know, I was supposed to be the guy, you know, to succeed out of this family. You know, I felt like I let her down, and that's kind of like I didn't know I was doing a lot of side jobs in Samoa. You know, helping my uncle build his home, just doing a lot of odd jobs, and it just finally clicked to me that I see all these soldiers joining the military, and I just wanted a ticket off island. My commitment was if I just go do my 4 years, you know, gets me
Yeah,
off island, and then I'll find a way to help my family from the states. So that was kind of to answer your question, that was my ticket away from home.
that was. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And you were saying that your mom was expecting you to be the one that succeeds out of the kids. Can you give us a little more, like how many siblings you had, or are you the oldest, or?
Yeah, there's five of us. The two girls are the oldest, and then my brother Junior, Neil Lava Junior, and then brother Teo. For most folks, yeah, know who Teo is. And then I'm the youngest. And I guess like for me, I was sort of sheltered. And like even my brothers were our relationships with my brothers were it was so unique that how would I explain this? I wanted to live that, that bad boy life. But my brothers kept me away from what the kids, what the kids we did around that
Yes.
time, like drinking and smoking and all that stuff. And they did what big brothers do. Um, so anytime, I don't know if you guys ever been around that circle, it was always questioned. Like very few folks even realized that we were siblings, we were brothers. It was because the protection that they had over me. And there's sometimes when you know, their their thing is would say, "That's your brother," like we didn't even know you were related to that guy.
Yeah,
And I
like
always
can I
tell folks,
was one of your brothers a DJ at that time, the dedication line?
yeah, at
KBZ,
WV,
oh, WVV,
yeah,
yes, yes.
yeah.
Yes.
So
Mm,
yeah, but um, I really appreciate what my brothers did. They did the big brother thing, but I wanted to have that bond with them. But for them, it was like, no, you're the parents' Billy.
yeah.
So go to church, go do those things. Ala ka longolo, look, that was always my fe'aui Samoa. You know, whanonga polo ka me longo vailo kai, then I would go and ka le longo for vailo uko. So that was my job in Samoa. That and taking my dad's tour, for kongai. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Need falefa te au. Oh, so we have a comment on here. It says, "Thank you for your service. Were there high expectations placed on you when you left home and joined the military?"
It's like for every other kid that joins the military, the expectation is um, you're well off, better than us, regardless of
Mhm.
what that pay is. Even as a E1, which is your lowest rank, everyone in Samoan believes like, wow, you're making weight. I think, yeah, it's good compared to Samoa. I remember when I got my first check, um, my first check in the military was $700, and at the time, this, I'm telling you my age. eh, like, fake COVID, they're actually counting out the money to you, so you have $700 in your wallet. But I did what every Samoan kid did. I did allotments to my mom. All my money was like, hey, why do I need money? I'm living in a barracks, right?
Right.
They're feeding me in the mess hall. So I didn't know what to do with money at the time. So all my money went back home. And it's just reading her letters, or if I ever got on the phone, it bring um, just joy to hear. You can read it through the letters. Whafakaisha o Kamba, so like,
Mhm.
of someone post office, you know, and just telling me what she bought,
Oh,
or surprising dad. All of a sudden she shows up at home with all the groceries, and that was that was what brought joy to them. And knowing that you were the provider, and I think a lot of Samoan kids have felt the same. I know a lot of my classmates from Leonia who were doing the same thing, because when we gathered, you know, we would borrow money from each other, and I'll say, what's going on? And they'll say, I'm kind of short. Most of my money's going home. And then, if I'm short, it was the same thing. So I think that's something that's great about Samoan kids that join the military, is they never forget about their ones back home. Yeah.
And I know, Arlington, you met some of your classmates and some of our people in the military when you were serving.
Yeah.
How was that for you, besides all the partying and stuff?
um, like one of my greatest friends, he's a Faife'au now from Amangave. His name is Leafe Amosa.
Mm.
Um, Very good friend of mine. Like we met like in biology, I think. He's either Mary Varghese class, or yeah, such a bright kid. Um, when he joined the military, it was kind of shock to me because I never envisioned him being a military guy. Yeah, he was. You know how those smart kids are. You just look at them. Oh, he's gonna go to college. He's
Yes.
gonna, be very prosperous. But when I heard he joined the military, it kind of threw me off, and I never had a chance to say bye to him. And then when I joined the military, I ended up being stationed where he was. And some Palangi guy that was in my class told him, "Hey, there's this other Samoan guy, you know, who just came from basic training." And he said, "What's the last name?" And then the guy said, "Tasi." He said, "No way." And then his first name, he said, "Arlington." So Leafe shows up, and I think it was like 2 years later since Leafe joined the military. Leafe, when I last seen Leafe, he was like a real skinny kid. And then Leafe shows up, and then someone says, "Hey, it's some guy that's outside wants to talk to you." So I jump in his Ranger, and he doesn't say anything. I don't recognize him because like he's buff now, like real, like big guy. And then he 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 finally he couldn't contain himself. He finally like laughs, right? And then I seen that smile, and I said, "Laughing," and yeah, just to meet and embrace like someone from home. It was such a great feeling to reunite with someone close to you, especially a classmate. We brought back a lot of memories, good memories of high school days. Like we would go to his house in Mangave all the time.
We have another question here. While some veterans face challenges when transitioning to civilian life, what challenges did you overcome, or what advice would you give to someone that is transition out?
Um, Understanding all the skill sets that you've done, right? There's so many different opportunities or job assignments that you're given. For example, like for me, when I joined the military, I was in the IT field, so I was in communications. The the job names or like in the military are very different than the civilian side. Um, so how would you convey that I have the skill set and put that on a resume to where, as of course we all know today how the application system works. It's not like someone's just going to read your resume. There are key words that the system or the database will elevate your name in that stack. So if you don't have the keywords, you may be the most experienced person, but that keyword is what bumps your resume to the top, and then that allows you to get an interview. And a lot of these things, like I wasn't familiar with at first, but there is a transition course for the military that tells you all these things. And I think that was valuable to me was to invest in that time and to learn what is that transition, how to build a resume, how to do interviews. I even went as far as proper eating etiquette, right? Who does that kind of stuff? I didn't even know there's a certain way to hold a fork and knife, when you're done eating, and just so um, a lot of is a culture shock, not just to us in the military, not just for Samoa, but in general. Like fancy eating is a thing, right? So when you're going on interviews, you may have a good interview. Have ayoko vangam kwale imas and manners or yeah. Nope, you don't know how to eat. I don't know if I can get into a sidebar, but military folks, GI Bill is one of those things I would highly recommend um, pursuing. Get as much education and certifications as you can get as you transition into civilian life.
Nice. Thank you. Sorry, we have another one. It says communication is essential, yet in some cultures it's not always emphasized. How did you overcome this challenge coming from the island? Did you face sorry, it's coming on. Did you face any bullying or difficulties in adjusting?
Yeah, no, it's very interesting that that's brought up. When I first joined the military, they used to look at Samoans as, I don't know if they thought of us as we were stupid, like just dumb. They thought you guys have strength and like you guys are very strong people, but like not good leaders. And that was the stigma that well we faced when we first got here. And I remember going through basic training. They would cycle through these leaderships, and I remember asking. I was tired because they kept replacing these folks, right? They were terrible at leading. And I raised my hand, and a drill sergeant asked me. He said, "What do you want?" Right? Just this. It pisses you off how they speak to you. And I said, "I'd like to, just give me an opportunity to lead, like everyone else is failing." And he didn't even give me a chance. He said, "Why would you lead? You can't even speak English." And of course, at the time, coming from Samoa, my English wasn't, the best. But I knew I could do better than those other folks. And I think another week or two goes by. They kept cycling other folks, and they failed. And again, I raised my hand. Then he looks at me. He's like, "What do you want?" I said, again, give me that opportunity to step in, as a leader. And as soon as I took over, I was never replaced. So I took, my platoon and end up, graduating. But what was interesting about being in basic training was I don't know if you guys know this other guy named Tusi Leudwai. So Tusi graduated 2 years before me, but he was also in basic training. So Tusi was in charge of his platoon, and then there's a girl from Taufa'asau. She was in charge of the girls group, and here we are, three Samoans, leading three different platoons. It was amazing. It was a great feeling to see like you're homesick, but then that's what made you feel comfortable. Like, oh man, I'm running things. Tusi's running things. I forgot the girl's name um, from Fasao, but she was running the girls platoon, and yeah, and I think it opened a lot of eyes what we were capable of doing. We're more than physical, but we had the brains to give direction.
Mhm.
Nice. So, sorry, another comment. So, wow, I'm glad you touched on that. There's often a stereotype that Samoans are solely focused on physical strength and that we lack intellectual depth or ambition. In reality, Samoans are incredibly capable, strong minded individuals with diverse talents and abilities. We have a rich cultural heritage, value education, leadership, and resilience, and we excel in many fields beyond just physical prowess. How do you feel about this stereotype, and have you personally challenged it in your life?
Yeah, stereotypes. It's almost borderline with racism. And when you confront people about stereotypes and racism, the first thing they say is, "Oh, you're so sensitive," right? Like for me, I usually question people who throw like even the slightest stereotypes, right? I I throw it back at them, and what I always get from them is they say, "Why you guys Islanders are always combative, right? Why are you combative?" And you get tired of being stereotyped. uh, You hear it all the time, but it's fun to throw around stereotypes. But when you confront them about it, all of a sudden you're the problem, right?
Right,
So you're always trying to how do you phrase this? They're pushing you because they want you to react, right? They want you to get
Yes.
physical because that's your temperament,
Mhm.
right? Fari, if we saw more bingy,
hmm
you're always fighting. It's what we do. We are violent folks, yeah, but um, like even in college, I remember it was one of my calculus classes. Um, they were Colombian students behind me, and they really couldn't speak English, and so they were conversing in the back because they couldn't really understand the instructor, teaching the material. But she would always get onto them for, collaborating in their language. So there's a lot of but stereotypes, like even in the military, it exists. It exists in every workforce.
I kind of almost feels like not just within our workforce, but also at home as well. So, and I'm going to touch base on that later, but I wanted to ask you in regards to college, right? How are you able to be in the Phi Delta Theta club, in the sorority, and at the same time play rugby? How are you able to manage all that? It's not easy to be in that sorority.
Um, for me, like when I first started college, like I said, I was very focused. I'm an older student, and I knew that the military will cut off my funds, so because I was
Mhm.
using a GI Bill, so I was very serious. But I was never a bookworm. I was always an outgoing type person. I got bored, and I wanted to do something other than studying. My grades were great, I was like 4.0 my first two semesters,
Wow.
but I was bored. That was not me. I'm not a bookworm. But it felt great to, like, my wife would always brag about it to, like, her colleagues, like, you know my boyfriend, he's a 4.0 student, and to me I was like, man, 4.0 in college, how am I doing this? But I was bored, like, and I told my wife at the time, I need to do something or I'm not going to survive
Mhm.
college. So I joined a fraternity, and the reason why I joined a fraternity, I was very active. I loved doing intramural sports, whether it was volleyball or football. I played all those sports, and I played like for different fraternities, and I played for the ROTC team. And when that was done, and then I heard about this rugby team, and they would travel, like they would play New Zealand and they would go to England. So yeah, our rugby coach at OU I think he was the first U.S. men's rugby coach.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, um, yeah, I don't know. In Samoa, like, you always play sports in the evenings, right? And then you go play and play and play. It's
Mhm.
not like there wasn't AAU to us back in Samoa, right? I
No.
think
Yeah.
that was our AAU, right? The
Yeah.
evening sports.
Yeah. Life like saka ka mo e lakapi. We have a comment on here, a question. What is one life lesson you wish you had learned earlier in life, and how do you think it would have impacted your journey?
Yeah, it was one of the things that touched me in the heart right now is, you know, the fasamo. And it's the trade-off, the trade-off of what you're pursuing. So your parents send you away from home to bring some income and bring some support to help stabilize the family back home. So for me, that's what I was taught. Go do something, go do well, help build the wealth of our family back home. And then I get to America. It's the message is kind of similar, but the message is, keep on chasing that dream, keep on chasing the dream. And when I end up chasing money so bad to where I made so much that I didn't even know what to do with it. Like, I didn't, there was no happiness, but I knew how to make money, and I was making so much money that I could ever imagine that. And I know it's hard to believe that you can say, like, I don't know what to do with money, but um, to me, as much as I made, it didn't feel like it was enough to take care of the family because falabelaves are just so excessive. And the more I made, the more my dad asked for money, right? And at the time, I didn't really question my dad. I just like gave. I just gave and gave, but it was frustrating, right? And the more he asked for money, the more it pushed me away from the culture. So my dad, as he got older in age, he would give me all his books, Kusi Farupenga, Kusi Fangu, everything. And I just said, Dad, like, why would I want to go down that road like, where you're at? It just seems like it's miserable. Um, I hated that he planned out of my pocket, right? I hated that every time he's seen how much I made, and it just felt like he can easily answer, like, oh, my son's got it. But he wouldn't say my son's got it. He said, oh, yeah, I got it. But to me, that was he was answering out of my income, right? And early on, when you're single, it doesn't really bother you. But then when you have your own family, at some point, priorities shift. Like, and me and Dad used to have arguments. Like, Dad, have you ever asked, you know, what is my financial situation with my family? Well, but those are the lessons that I learned, um, which differentiates my way of leading versus how my dad when he led. And the message I'm promoting to my family today is, let's get rid of the excessiveness, right? Like, how can we I don't like this random $1,000, right? Random. And I'm kind of getting off subject, but if I had to do it differently, right now, I have a different view now. I have a different view on our culture. Um, I see when my dad was like, I embrace the Fasamoa now more than I did initially when I was frustrated with my dad. And now I give more today than I ever did. And I give more freely for Falablaves, whether it's my mom's side, whether it's my dad's side and the extended side. And I think it's important that, um, if I could do things differently, I probably would have listened to dad more. And um, when my dad was young, he was a wealth of knowledge with all the Fasamoa. He tried to share that wisdom with me. He wanted to give that to me. He wanted me to follow the Fasamoa path, and do the same thing with your journey and your career. But because I pushed all that aside and I kept chasing the money because I was trying to give dad all the money, but I feel like, I am rich in the Palangis culture. I'm rich in financially in the Palangi ways, but I'm very, very poor in the Fasamu, you know, and that
So,
if I had to
Arlington,
do it all over.
you mentioned that you give freely now. When you say freely, what are you talking about as far as freely? Are you just giving whatever they're asking you, or based off of what you can afford to give on your budget?
hmm Yeah, like I said, like for me, if I fool, right? Um, I'll just give you an example. Like my two families that we've had like 4 or 5 Falablaves on each side, but y- like how my dad used to do it was these 5 Falablaves, right, would occur. My dad will have the same amount regardless. So if it's afe, afe, lima Falablava, lima afe. To me, I'm not, I'm not gonna give 5,000, right? So, and I'm conveying this to the families, like, hey, all I can give is this, right? And then the message I tell my family is, I am not ashamed to go and present 100, 200, right? And I think a lot of Samoans are ashamed to go even attend a funeral if you only have 100. Like, that's the wrong message we're sending. "Olame ke mai alu if I love it," if you only have 100, you know, that's the feel, that's all you can, or male mo mai, if that's all you have, that's what you give. Quit trying to go above and beyond. Um, "Mea ngau polong ai ai, mafangau." So,
Yes.
Yes. And we did talk about this also with Susie. She was on last week, talking about, back then, um, when you don't have enough to give, right? If when people showed up, if I fit out, right? Or kuka me ai, kapenga is set up, it's like if you didn't have as much to give financially to contribute, being there from dawn till dusk, doing hours the whole day, like that means a lot, right? Because you need manpower, but people didn't feel bad about that, versus nowadays, like you said, right? People will even feel bad just to go and help out because they didn't, physically help out because they didn't give financially.
yeah.
So, like
Like for
that's,
me, like I always tell my siblings, no one remembers what you gave, but they remember the face that they seen that attended the funeral.
That's
That's like
true.
I always tell
yes.
them, think about mom's funeral. Do you remember how much any of the families gave? I say no, but do you remember who was there, right? So I said it's more important to show face rather than some random figure. no one cares you brought 5,000 or 3,000 or 10,000. A week after Father of Love, they're not going to remember that. They're going to only remember, the love that you brought and you shared, you know, a tough time with them, a shoulder to cry on, or help, strengthen that family during a time of need. So, yeah.
I wanted to add, since one of the fun facts that was mentioned in here was your Matai title. You were given the Tasiaeafe title, and you share that with, I believe, your young cousin.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing your stance on Fa'alavelave, how does that title given to you play a part in your decision in Fa'alavelaves?
Yeah, so the title that we have is Swafalua, but um, it's unique. It's different than every other title that's Swafalua. Anytime anyone hears there's two title holders, the first thing they assume is, oh, that's why, one guy's pulling the title one way, guy's pulling the title the other way. It was never like that with this Tasiaeafe title. The title that my dad had, um, I actually told my dad, you know, I call him my younger brother. My younger brother, Fatu, who is very immersed in the culture. He's been doing a lot of Falaves. He's the leader of his church, Kiakongo. He was handling all these Falaves, and he understands the Alongaupus, and when you listen to him speak, it amazes you how much wealth of understanding he has with the culture. So, that all being said, um, the pride that I have in the Tasi name, I knew my dad was up there in age. My dad was not using a title. So I told my dad, Dad, I know it's kind of taboo to ask for a title to be transitioned away from you while you're still living. But the true Fasamoa is the Matais have to have a voice of the family. We need a leader. You're not acting in that capacity at this time. Amalia, we give it to the young brother over there. You know, wouldn't it be great? Because people are asking him when he does favelaves, local file, lalo swafamokayen, and he'll just say, like, humbly tell them, I don't have a Matai title. It's just the gift of God that is, allowing me to speak. And I just told the family, like, what a wasted opportunity for the Samoan people to hear this young brother of mine speak. And if I can only imagine the pride we would get when people ask him, and then he would say, "Olo swafo kasi." That was my direction, right? I wanted that title to go to my younger brother, but Dad wanted the title. He wanted me to have some part in the title. So my dad said, why don't you want the title? So my dad, he had the old philosophy, it was from my dad, he took the title, and then, it should go to, you should have some say. But to me, I reminded Dad, that's not the Fasamo way. You're not really in charge of the title. The Matai titles, the family has to have the say. And, it goes to Waikankale, ang Va'amongi Diswafa, right? And I think that's why, but in order for the old man to release the title, he said, unless you take the split title, I will not give you guys the title. I'll take it to my grave.
Oh.
And that's what, it was my agreement, because I wanted Dad to release the title. Okay, well, I'll do what you want. I'll take half of the title, and Fatu the other half. And that's where we're at today, So to honor Dad's wishes, and the old man's happy that I have a say in the title, and I'm happy that Brother Louis, Fatu has a say in the title, because that's what I wanted. Yeah.
And Malo lava faukuwa lele, right? A lot of people will just take the title for themselves, right? Knowing what comes with it. So that the fact that you were able to see beyond that and see what good it would bring to the family and the
Mm-hmm.
title versus just, to yourself, because we do know there are differences in the way Matais are in families that get the title for certain reasons. So
Mm-hmm.
hats off to you on that. There are comments on here. So Duke says $1,000 is low now. LOL. And then he said, the hard part is the family that owns the Falavelave is left with all these bills after, trying to deal with that and cannot grieve properly. That a lot of times breaks families up. Then there's other comments. It says, in our culture, there's often a desire to show others that our family can provide a certain amount of money, driven by pride and importance of status. In American culture, however, the focus tends to be more on what you can give in terms of service, time, or effort rather than material wealth. How do you think these cultural differences shape how people perceive success and generosity?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question, and that's kind of what we should question ourselves, and it all starts with individual families before we take it to the broader community. The question should be, wala akong kusiingay may, and if you're bringing, let's say 5,000, and what's common in the Samoan five levels is you take 5,000 and the family turns around and gives 2,000 back or something like that, like half, at least half. But the question comes to mind is, I always ask the question when I go, be honest with me. Be honest with me. What is your financial state of your falablave? You right? So, like for me, as we prepared my mom's funeral, I don't think a lot of folks asked that very question. You know, or the male kung yung mga pili, falablave, the funeral home, the cemetery, all the expenses, and I think there's a disconnect because we tend to focus on to reciprocate what was brought in, right? If it's nga iya nga makangale kwe ola nga ili kwe works follow. Like to me, I'm like that's bull. Like I'm straight up like I've done family funerals where I really told the other side of the family, like you know this is unique, and I know you guys understand the culture. You're expecting something back from this 511. You just given me this amount, but I'm telling you right now that this funeral right here, there's a lot of bills and expenses that have not been paid. We're gonna use everything that you brought for this funeral, and of course, like my family, I'm getting backlash from my family, like hey, makanga, and then of course the other side of the family is saying the same thing, like wangim, And to me, I just said, between your family and our family, we're all responsible somewhat for this 511. I'm telling you right now, there's bills that need to be paid, and I'm not going to like be the burden of this 511 on my own. So there's money on the table that you brought. There's money that we brought. We can, bury this whole 511 by just taking everything that was brought in and wipe out this funeral cost. But you know, if people come with the humbling experience and not expect to walk back or go back home with what they brought or anything that they brought, I think that's a true testament to your love for the family. How can you walk away knowing there's 2,000 or 3,000 in debt that the family owes to the hospital or to the funeral home, knowing that you just walked away with what could have been for the family? And I always question, "Okeme sawe ko kusanga," when you ask your individual families to support that funeral, are you saying, "Ku mai sali mafe," I guarantee you I bring 2,000 back? Like,
Mm,
like no one says that, right? But if you give from your heart, if nothing comes back, but just to have the feeling of, you're grateful that this family, although they're mourning, you've just lifted a big burden off of them by taking care of all their expenses, right? So, there's a fine line of, you know, people treat funerals as a money-making business, and I think that's where a lot of issues come along. You guys bring your soswangi, but then you're giving, but at the same time your other hand
expecting.
is out. Like, what do I
Yeah.
get in return, right? So
Right.
if
And
you
I think
guys are
that's because
offended by any of this, then you're guilty of it.
right, or when they give back, or then umaifo, right, like the money that could have gone to the expenses of the funeral. If I laugh for if I laugh for right, and then everybody else that leaves with it, and it's like that money was intended for a certain purpose, right? So, I totally get it. So there's another comment. So The Matai title in Samoan culture traditionally passes down through male lineage, and it's often seen as a title held by male leaders. However, the role of women in Samoan society has evolved, and many believe that female taking on a Matai title is a natural progression, reflecting the growing recognition of women's leadership abilities. A female Matai can bring a unique perspective and strong sense of family responsibility. What are your thoughts on how the Matai title is evolving, and how do you think a female Matai would impact the community?
Yeah, like, there's no doubt that females can um, serve in leadership roles. Like we see it everywhere in society. Um, they're CEOs, they're presidents of companies, but um, Samoa, every village is different, and every district is different in Samoa. So you'll always hear the chief say, "It's the angay fungo," right? And you have to protect what is sacred to each village and each district. So if there's a village that is taboo to have woman as a leader, like for me, even though I support women's rights, I also think there's some things in our culture that has to be protected, and that's the unfortunate side. Um, does it mean you can't do the job? No, it does not mean, it does not mean that. I do acknowledge a lot of the capabilities there because there, like this one file of love I just came from, it was a woman Matai. And like for me, like I always tell the people, I'm new to this. I understand our culture a lot, but I can't really convey that in the nganga Whailaunga, right? So when it was my time to honor her or say something in respect, for her. So I was trying to convey my thoughts, in the Matai language, and I just said, please excuse me, like we all speak English here as well, but I really respect, and I'm talking to the female Makai. It's like I am very, very, honored to listen to what you speak. The way you had, every family that brought in their CEs, you just were able to deliver the message of gratitude and thanking them. And in front of there was no other female Makai. There's just one female Makai, and she was the lead Makai, right? Including myself. I'm sitting there like she's more wiser than me, and I just shared with her an analogy that one of our Alanga Upu says, waka fia whare alili fua, right? But so I said, I made an analogy to her that the pride that I felt from listening to her and the way she delivered in, you know, for the Five Love, it made me feel so pride that I wanted to be part of her family, to be under her leadership, right? And she really like had a good laugh of it because and then she shared with me, she said, "Ole whainga ka, yole mele," it's a male dominant system. And I just encourage her. It's like I don't know how you do it, but the sense of pride that I have, and I really support you. I don't know what the means is to change like village protocols. It's hard. It's so hard to get. I think Vailoa is not like that. Like our village in Vailoa, I remember asking my aunt one time, because she's so knowledgeable, my dad's sister, she's so very knowledgeable in Fasamoa. I say, why don't you go do a Matai taro? And she says, oh, Lenga, if Vailoa doesn't honor that. And I said, wow, what a wasted opportunity, right? So my auntie spends so much time trying to provide me her wisdom, and she gets frustrated with me because there's a lot of times she's struggling trying to get me to grasp this. But I'm very grateful to have someone like that, right? To teach me. And I always tell her, you know what, you have a lot of wisdom with you, and I wish that you had been a Matai because man, you sure could lead. Yeah.
Lena, was there something you had?
Sorry, there's in society today, we work nonstop and feel like we have nothing left to give. How do you maintain a positive mindset and continue to find joy in the process or journey?
Yeah, like everything we do. I think if you start your day in prayer, right, get your mindset right, there's always going to be negative thoughts or the enemy's attack on you just from the get-go, the minute you wake up. I think for me, what I've learned in life was if you start with God, and there's times you forget, and your temptation is there, and you're frustrated or you're exhausted. I think God still finds time to remind you, like, settle down, son, or calm down, or step away, right? You're stressed. Don't retaliate, through anger when things don't go your way. If people disagree with you, um, just be calm, right? Be calm. And for me, I've always looked at my wife and daughter as there's so much for you to lose. And I look at the home I own, the cars, that I own. I can lose it within, that one emotional decision that I make. When I was young, I would always turn to anger. You piss me off, and then all of a sudden I follow my emotions. I'm going to retaliate or do something that will cost me dearly. But I think as we grow up, you have to put something that is so treasured to yourself, that put that in the forefront, that the decisions you make, whether, there's always a saying, choose the hard right over the easy wrong. So if you follow that and always, like, family, like, even like the driving course, they say put your family photo in front, like, before you drive, put it on your dash, because it tells you not to speed and not to road rage, because you might not make it back home. But I think you follow the same concept. Like, for me, it's always in my mind. Um, if I want to quit on a job, if I want to, like, make that decision that's going to cost my family, I can lose all that in an instant. So that's what drives me, and helps me during my stressful times.
I wanted to ask a question in regards to your name, right? We talked about Matai and stuff. Where did your name come from? And um, I was wondering if it had to do with Arlington in Texas, but it probably isn't.
No, so the story is, like, my dad tells a story of how he changed his life around. So when in his younger youthful age days, he was like, drank a lot and was a troublemaker, always starting fights. And he had a dream one night, and, like, God reached into his, like, his brain, and just kind of, like, pulled his brain out. And it was a to him, that was the vision of for him to turn his life around, turn away from all the sin. So he started attending. It was called. We were living in Hayward, California at the time, and dad and mom were Hayward Community Church, right? Arlington Community Church in the city of Hayward. So when I was born, um, that's where my dad dedicated his life to Christ, and um, he named me after Arlington Community Church, which was interesting because, like, when me and Taylor were the youngest, we only knew dad as the good person. We didn't see any of his dark side. That my older siblings tell stories of dad's prior life, prior to accepting Christ. Um, Dad was always ashamed of his tattoos, right? Like, he's got tattoos. Um, when we got tattoos, he was frustrated, like, um, because he had turned to Christ and he did everything for keep his kids in line. He wanted us to be in a righteous path, but I think we all learn at some point.
Um, Going back to the culture when you were talking about it, so your daughter, she embraces both her Samoan and Native American cultures. How do you ensure that she stays connected to both sides?
Yeah, like, I think my wife is kind of like how I am. My wife does a lot of participation in their Native American cultures, Comanche and Osage, and I make sure that they find time to attend all the their powwows and stuff like that. And the same thing on our side. Um, from a young age, I always took my daughters to Laves. And I always told her, like, you're gonna get yelled at, but don't worry. Like over time, you'll know. And I always tell her, oh, or get out there. You see what those girls are doing? Grab the yoko. And then her aunties would laugh, right? Kalau fusking in kia, like, you know.
Qualify.
But they would, they loved her. They loved her just to see, just to go do things. Um, and I think it wows some folks to see Talia. There's events, and if her grandfather's there, she knows to go and get his plate. Just the things we do.
Yes.
Yeah, and yeah, she embraces her Samoan culture as much as she does her native ones. Yeah.
Do you see some kind of similarities between their culture and ours?
Yeah, there's a lot of the chiefdoms are a little bit different. Um, let's see the way they respect like the elders. So there's a lot of that. They're very protective of their own individual tribes. It's how we are. Like their tribes are kind of like villages, to us in Samoa, and they're very protective from outsiders. But I think they do a great job in cultural preservation, language preservation. Um, yeah, there's a lot of similarities in both sides. Yeah.
We have a question on here that asks, how many tattoos do you have? And is there one in particular that holds a special meaning for you?
Let's see. So like I don't know. You always have these kinds, right? These are young high school, right? And then I got my sleeve done back in 2012. The one
Did
that
you?
I'm working on is I'm supposed to get my like sometime this year. So if there's none that I have now or that meaningful, I think the next one that I'm waiting for is the one that would be have a lot of meaning to myself, I guess. Mm.
I wanted to ask on a side question with another fun fact. You were an inspiring model. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we stumbled on this. There was a agency that was rolling through Oklahoma. Oh, I remember now. So in college, I was trying to make money, and um, through the arts class I was taking, they had a way to make money. So you would go and pose as the students will just kind of like Titanic. They're drawing. You're still away, but I think there was a flyer there. It said you can make so much money, like millions of dollars, through Model Search America, right? It's called Model Search America.
Mhm.
So they go through each city or state, and they're looking for commercial models or magazine models, and to me, it's like, oh, okay, I think I look good. Let me just give it a chance. So I went to the one in Oklahoma, and this like auditorium was packed, and the guy is going through. He's like, no, 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 and then all of a sudden, the guy's like, you, right? And I just look to my wife. I was like, the guy thinks that I might have a chance. So I made it past Oklahoma. I think there's 20 of us that made it to the regional down in Dallas. So we go down in Dallas, and um, they tell you send a headshot and a full length shot.
Mhm.
And then I get down there, man. I've never done this before, but they have what I don't know what's it called, the catwalk or walkway, right? Like the T, like so you walk like everyone goes through and you're walking through, and as you're done, you hear them like in the front are all these modeling agencies, just kind of like how you see on TV. There's like 50 modeling agencies looking to pick up their next, models. And they said, okay, listen closely to your number. And as I was sitting, I heard my number call, being called, and me and my wife were like, "Oh wow, we got one," and was like all happy. And then all of a sudden, my name gets called from another modeling agency, They're like, two. It's like, oh man, they're all excited. And then we kind of look around. People are like looking at us like they're irritated because they don't even have one, right? And then the third one, that's like, look at my wife. It's like, damn, I want to share my excitement, but people are pissed off because they don't even have one, right? And then the fourth one, but what ingo ingo mga kaya? Like, really, you got four, and we're still sitting at zero. And then the fifth one came up, and then um, it's like telling my wife, "Do you really think I'm that good looking?" And she's like, "I don't know what they see in you, but I guess these modeling
Oscar.
agencies, yeah." But that's my story of aspiring models trying to make millions through these agencies.
Oh,
Mhm.
fine. So, as you've taken your journey in our culture, right? As you said, you getting the title from the family, Ainga, and reading through books, and you're actually doing your research, right? You also have a fountain of knowledge in your father, right? He's 82, I think you said.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've captured the differences between reading it and all these books, right, versus the stories that you hear from your father, right? So as you capture the history from your father, like what's one of the most inspiring or emotional stories that you've learned from your father?
Yeah, like my dad was raised by his grandfather, which was Lopa Ngu. And the story goes, how did you guys arrive? How did the Lopa name come into existence, right? Um, and he has a lot of pride in how this came about. And the story goes, I think it was Maliatoa comes to Vailoa, because there's some relations, and he's looking for warriors. And if I can remember correctly, um, either there was a war in Opolu, or Maliakoa is trying to take a fight to Kuimangua. So um, he picks up Sakele, from Vailoa, and he says, "I need an orator, right, to join us." So Sakele takes, Lopa at the time. He didn't have the name at the time, and they go to Whangaikua. Whangaikua is where Le'iako is at, and of course everyone knows Le'iako is like the biggest name in Kukuila. So I think they were supposed to join Le'iako and then go to Mangua. So they make their journey to Whangaikua, and they're taking some boat, I'm assuming, and they make it in such an impressive time. So they get to Le'iako, and Le'iako says, to Sakele, you know, to the effect like, "Wow, I'm very impressive how quick you guys got here from Bailo. Ole ale ala lang ngalua wima ye." And then he says, ole ava ilo pa. So ava is like in the ocean. So
Mhm.
what pathway did they take? And they took the Lopa passage, and then that's how the Yako pretty much give him the name Oloingoa, or Ava Ilopa, Ava Ilopa. So, and there's different tellings of the story, but that's kind of one that stands out. And what the reason why it's unique to me is it's a story that's been passed down by our Lopa family. And when you hear stories like that, sometimes you question any truthfulness, right? There's always a skepticism that follows tales from your family. But um, I came across one book that was taught at ASCC, and then it was very similar. It captures the Lopa story, and just to say like, wow, like how does this old man retain all this knowledge, right? And things that you question whether or not it's legit, but it's also captured by someone who put it in this, published it for ASCC to teach, Samoa history. So yeah, there's a lot of things that the old man shared, dear to our family. I would go and research it, and one of them, like I can't really share it here, but I found the truth through looking at AS, what is it called? American Samoa Bar Association, and it has the whole history of this event. That my dad told me about. That it just seems untrue to even believe how he told it. But I found it in the American Samoa Bar Association, and from there I started to believe in the old man when he tells his stories. Yeah.
We have another question here. If you hadn't pursued a career in military, do you think you could have seen yourself as America's next top model or on a Vogue magazine cover?
um, I think for me, like I didn't give a lot of praise to the person. Like for me, I owe everything to my wife. Um, the success I have today is because of following her footsteps. Because she was in college before I was. She was older than I was, and um, she just knew all the ropes around the administration part in college. So she was the one that was helping me with my applications and helping me just to kickstart, that journey through college. And when things got tough, she was always there to say like, "Don't quit." Right? There was times when I just wanted to go to Samoa. I'm like, I'm tired of this, college stuff and these bills, and it's just like stick it through. Think about your family. Like they're relying on you.
Hmm.
You're gonna go to Samoa and do what? You know, who's gonna give money to them? But to have someone who understands and respects the unique situation you have tied to Samoa, she's always been that person who just to remind you, stay the course, right? Stay the course. Um, for me, there's a lot of um, in the military. The more rank you make, the less folks you can rely on to speak to when you have troubles. And I'm assuming the same is in any field, right? You can't just go share with the colleague. Oh, I'm having a hard time with work or with family. And that's kind of been my experience. The more I climbed the ranks in the military was um, you can't really share your problems with anyone, and you're going through the same challenges with every other ordinary person. But I can come home and share with my wife. So to answer the question, I think I would have still made it. It would have been a little bit tougher. It's always hard to navigate something like for me coming from Samoa without having someone show you the way, right? And you you just need the like the message I tell my daughter today is you should have no reason to not do better than your dad, right? You have a better education than your dad. You have all the wealth and everything given to you. The education that you have is better than your dad. You should do better than me, right? So there's no excuses. But it's kind of similar to the question that you asked. Is someone knows that blueprint or someone knows the shortcut, and we need to share that with others. And
Yes.
I do not hesitate to share with my daughter or share with my nieces and nephews and anyone else that's close to me. I just tell them, here is what I went through and here's what to avoid. I don't really think it's difficult, because if you avoid everything that I failed at or that I stumbled on, it'll make your life much easier as you go through it. But trust me, follow my advice, and I think that'll help anyone on their journey.
Taufa'asau. So the comments on here, props to a man who acknowledges his wife for his success. That kind of recognition shows deep respect and appreciation. With all your accomplishments and the path you've taken, what is it that you truly want in life now? What drives you moving forward?
Yeah, I go back to the Fasamo. Like I told like my dad, I envy all my classmates or people within my age. I look on Facebook and Instagram, like Melako Lafo or how they speak to one another to understand the culture. Um, I I envy that. I wish I was in where my dad was at this age and all the knowledge that he had, teaching Samoan culture at American Samoa. I wish I had that, and I wish I'd started on picking up the Fasamo much earlier because I feel like I'm so behind right now. So my journey right now is like, if you look in my room, um, I always say this to myself. "Wa koe kapala ia," look what I have. It's like, this is just a few of the books that I'm reading to um, educate myself. I don't need any more degrees. I don't need any more, like, well, I can't say I don't need any more money because we all need money, but like, also, this is what I was, telling you, Dai
Yes.
Samoa, Samoa
Hmm.
incident, the book of Kramer. Well, for those who don't know what we're talking about, if you ever want to know where all the Galala Vau comes from, or, any story, um, Fasamo, this Kramer was the one that wrote all these stories. So there's two volumes, and he wrote all the Falupenlas to all the villages, all the stories, Kaladavau were in these two volumes. Um, it's worth if you're into correcting what the stories were, it's best to go to the original source, and then um, that'll be a good base as you're forming your arguments, with folks online, if that's what you're into. Because there's a lot of posts, "Lefi ngaua," "Polarisa onga kalanga." And I always tell them, Larkala Kramer, because Kramer wrote it first, right? And everyone else that, beyond that is, um, is an add-on. So if you go to the source, what did the source say? And then, like, I ask my dad all the time. I said, "Dad, you told me this story, but it's it kala anga oe what Kramer wrote." And then my dad, like, he doesn't like being wrong, but he understands, where the source comes from, and he says, wow, like, my whole life, I was taught this way. But it really makes sense that, the way you've read it, read these stories, it brings to light, some of the gaps, in his understanding. So it's good to see the old man acknowledge they didn't have these books. They didn't have this, all this resource to them. And some of these are found on the internet. So,
Yeah, I was going to
um,
ask you
mhm,
because you mentioned that the book comes in a German language, right? And
mhm,
so there's another one that's English.
yep.
I try to go on Amazon to look for it, but is that where you got yours from?
So the English version is actually on the internet. You just have to just keep on finding. Eventually,
Okay.
you'll stumble on it. But the reason why I chose the German one, because I want to go to what um, it has the German on one side and then the Fasamo on the other side. But I want to see what he wrote, like, firsthand, right? You know, what was
Okay.
it written like? Like, for example, ole faiva ole sai. So they have the Samoan version on one side and the German on the other one.
Oh,
So this
wow.
is prior to the English, translation. And I always like to go to the source because I don't really trust, whatever that first English translation
Mhm.
was, because you're reading the Fasamo and you can make your own determination of, like, what it means. Otherwise, you're just going to follow what the English translation was. So, not to say that they're wrong, but I like to make my own decision on how, right? Because you read the Bible, and if you know right? People say no, I see if I go away, and you say no, this is how I interpret it. So that's the basis of my argument.
So, go ahead, Lena. Go ahead.
Oh no, no, I was just gonna say, like, as we come to a close, sorry, we know we kept you over. There's a lot of interesting thing, and maybe we can have a session two, as we have with other people that have come on and shared their stories, because there, as we can see, there is a lot more to share. I don't even think we've gotten through half of what we were able to map out to speak about, right? But pafkai lavar faso, pafkai, famangwe akle koya oimalo ainga kausimakua, right? And malolava your journey on our anganu'u, and keeping it alive or reviving it elsewhere. I have hats off to you on that, and continue.
So we have another question here before we start to end, and I wanted to touch base with the high school part of it, right? So who did you hang out with in high school? Do you still keep in touch with any of them? And looking back, is where you are in life what you envisioned back in high school?
Yeah, like I said, I'm from Bailoa, so of course, the for the most part, I hung out with the Bailoa boys. But for me, um, like a lot of the peers, like I extend my friendship to like you know how Bailoa and Leonge were always like against each other, but I didn't have that friction between them. So I was probably one of the rare Bailoa guys that can be down in Songi, right? And then the Songi boys will correct the young boys because the young boys would know I'm from Bailoa and they will say, you know, start some trouble. But the Songi boys would say, you know, hey, like leave him alone, right? But that's kind of the respect that we had in high school. People that I hung out with are like, of course, I mentioned Lafe. Ray Mayava from Leongi was a very, very close friend of mine. I still keep in touch with them today. Between Ray and Lafe, we were always the, we've been like the trio, like because of our military careers um, have been mirrored. Like I would always go to Fort Hood to see Lafe, whether it was Georgia, and then Ray was always at Fort Sill. So me and Ray, it seems like have always been together.
Duke says, Ali, give your dad my love. He had a huge impact on my life. Love that man, and God bless you.
Okay, I got one more last question, which
Thank
is a
you.
very interesting one because I saw it on one of the outlines. Tell me about the UFO experience.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, my wife is Native American, and when I first met my wife, um, they would always, I would come home and a grandmother would say, you know, UFOs were following me, and then it, UFOs in the Native American culture are, it's just like normal talk. They're used to seeing it, and to me, UFOs to me was what I seen on Unsolved Mysteries. So one night, me and my wife are returning movies, and this is back in the 90s at kind of like in Fort Sill area, and we're coming back. So where my wife and them live at are in the country, so very dark. And as we're pulling back in the driveway, you know, there's a red dot in the sky, and then another red dot in the sky, and in the country it's like just pitch dark. And then my wife says UFOs. And mind you, you know, they were talking, they talk UFOs all the time, and I'm looking. Before you know it, it's like let's just imagine it's like 5 miles, but it's in the air. So one light, another light. They're only like it's like Knight Rider, right? Only like series
Yeah.
of lights in a distance and hovering in the sky. And then she gets out and she runs in the house and getting her family. You know, me not knowing and not believing in UFOs, I'm curious, and I'm standing outside in the car and I'm looking in the sky. So I see this big, massive object. It's like the size of a stadium in the sky, and this object is now approaching me. Right, it's getting closer, and then next thing I know, the front of the UFO, its lights just light me up. Right, it's just lights up the whole area. But the UFO had no noise, not like an airplane or a helicopter, like no noise. It's just like hovering, like a stadium-sized thing in the air in the sky. So once it lit up, the first thing that came to my mind was, oh, I know what these lights are. You know, Unsolved Mysteries says, you know, these lights will beam you up to the UFO. Yeah. So when I seen those lights light me up, you know, hangilo sa mo, and I ran into the house, you know. But you know, so that was my UFO experience, and then the UFO, he just like takes off in the sky. So yeah, and so the family started teasing me like, "Oh, you a believer now?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm a believer now in your UFOs."
I believe you too. And that's why I don't drive. I don't drive when it gets pitch dark at nighttime. I just go straight home if I'm out of the city. I just make sure to get a hotel. Don't even bother. I've already seen too much aikus in Samo, so I'm good.
So what's interesting is if you ever go on YouTube, there's a video that came out around the same time. It was in Arizona. There's a video of the same thing. It's very clear, red dots, red dots, red dots, red dots in the sky and just hovering. And the city of Arizona, or state of Arizona, they declined it or denied it, saying it was military activity. But pretty much there is a video that's out there that shows you exactly what I'm talking about, and it happened in Arizona. It's like a massive object. All of a sudden, it goes behind the mountains. So if you ever want to see, like, just trying to imagine what I seen, pull up
No,
that YouTube video of Arizona back like in the 90s. Yep, that's my UFO experience.
yeah, I'm good. I think I'm good.
Thank you guys again for for this opportunity to share with you guys. I'm sorry if I got too long-winded. Hopefully, anything that was presented today becomes valuable to you guys. It's good to catch up with you guys, and yeah, very grateful for what you guys have set up, and yeah, keep up the good job.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the invitation to share your journey with everyone. And like what we said, your story is going to impact everyone around who's also tuning in and listening later, especially your own family, your lovely wife and your beautiful daughter, that they'll be able to look back and watch these videos and say, some of the advice that you've given us. So thank you so much.
Yeah, very welcome.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah,
Alofa. Send our
yeah,
love to you, man.
Yep.
yeah,
And as always, to God be all the glory, and everybody, you have a good night.
yeah.
Ang weird po.
Yes.
Thank you.